Welcome to another episode of the Read Pile. I'm going to be doing something a bit different today. After, I think it was Welcome Back Frank, I started thinking about how the stuff I had been reading for this show recently had been stuff that I either knew, suspected that I liked, still, that I'd read before, or newer things. So I needed to get back to the root of the show, which was to reread things that I wasn't sure about from this room in order to make determinations about whether or not to keep them or get rid of them. So I went back to the Maybe show, which is right over here, and I grabbed some things off of that, starting with White Death. Now, this is a World War I story set in the mountains of Italy. It's pretty interesting, especially, I'm just going to say, if you're a comic historian and want to see pre-Walking Dead Charlie Adlard, it has that art. But the story's okay. It's about how horrible war is. So if you had any questions, war sucks. And I found it hard to root for any of the characters. I just didn't care enough about any of them. The art was I found it a little difficult to tell who some of the characters were at times, and so it's pretty loose. And it gets to the end, and it's not satisfying, and I don't advise getting this. But if you're interested in sort of some comics history, then by all means, that's your decision. So after that, I grabbed Killing Girl, which I think I had read at least some of before. This I know I'd read before, and I had decided to keep it, and this time I'm deciding to let it go. The beginning of it seemed familiar, and then the end was a complete mystery. So I think I started it and never finished it. I don't know why she's naked on the cover. She is fully dressed throughout the series. It's a strange choice. But this too, what if the Mafia had its own secret service? Is just a flat-out lie. That's not what this is. She does work for the Mafia. She's a hitman for the Mafia. She's supposed to be 19, and there's some weird stuff going on with her age and how much she remembers, because she was kidnapped at 3, but she remembers a lot for a 3-year-old or younger, because, you know, not everything happens on one day. Anyway, she was kidnapped at 3, raised by the Mafia into a killer. I think she was intended to be for a different role, and then she attacks a buddy and bit part of their face off. But my problem with this is the characters just don't act like real characters, and this is going to be something that I say later today when I film this week's Comics Today, is the characters feel like they're being driven by the plot, not that they are driving the plot themselves. So at one point, minor spoilers, she reunites with her mother after 16 years, and it's not a big emotional scene. It's just like, oh hey, and I'm like, none of this rings true. So the stuff that should be kind of emotional scenes just falls flat, and it's extremely strange. The art, as I've been flipping through this, is loose as well. Colors are sort of splashed on there. Let me look at this just panel in particular at random. There's a lot of that going on. So it's I honestly don't advise getting this one either, but again, your decision. After I finished Punisher, I had Pat Lee on the brain. I grabbed this off the rack. I remember liking it many years ago, and this time I don't think I even made it 10 pages in before I gave up. I'll show you why. So, like, the first real page of text here is white text. It's white, somewhat blurry text, because there's, I think, a halo around all of the white, and it's on a semi-transparent background, so you can see part of his arm through that text box, his hand over there. This was a chore to read. And so this is the opening font size, but then let me show you a few pages later when we get to this, which is a much smaller font, and I'm just like, I am not putting up with this. There's no excuse for this. I can't do it. I'm not going to strain my eyes just to read. Plus, the cover to this, her anatomy kind of breaks my brain. Like, she's very thin and yet very large, and there's something about the structure of her face that just seems pushed slightly to the side. So I used to like Pat Lee, and now I can't. I don't want to look at nor read. This is one of those. Again, it's kind of one of those. If you're interested in sort of comics history things, then this is one of those early 2000s, late 90s. Early 2000s was sort of the explosion of American attempts at manga anime stuff, and this is definitely one of the prime examples of that. Really, everything Pat Lee was doing at the time, and now I can't get 10 pages into it before I give up. So there's that. Lastly, and this blows my mind the most, I got this Astronauts in Trouble. Both this and White Death were put up by AiT Planet Lar. I found Larry Young, I think, somehow through Warren Ellis, and I grabbed a couple of the books that he was publishing at the time. Here's what blows my mind, though, is before I had just bookmarks everywhere. Of course, there's not one within reach at the moment, but before I had bookmarks everywhere, I just used to use scraps of paper, including receipts or envelopes. There's a receipt stuffed in here, and I kept it where it was. Dated, look at this, January 2002. It's been there for 22 years. And this is another one where I had started reading it. I remember this opening sequence, and then I never finished. So I finished reading it for the first time. This is, of all of these books, the one that I recommend the most. It's extremely interesting. It's unpredictable in a variety of ways, but there is, in essence, a news crew that gets sort of shanghaied into taking a trip to the moon with a billionaire, and it is surprisingly on point, relevant. It nails a bunch of things that have happened in subsequent decades, as far as like billionaires going to space and just being absolute nut jobs. This is funny. It's the most interesting of the lot. I'm ultimately deciding to get rid of this as well. I'm glad that I read it, but it didn't do enough for me. There's some subplots. I think it should have focused a bit more on the main plot rather than some of the subplots, which I don't even want to bring up because if anyone does read it, I want them to be as surprised as I was, rather than just throwing out something and then intended for enticement and then sort of ruining a surprise for you. But there's definite weirdness here. It is by far the most interesting, the funniest, most well-constructed, but still, I'm letting this one go as well. So this is what I have been reading this week. I don't know what I'm reading next. I have no idea. I have many options, though. So I will, as always, be back next week with something else. Thanks for watching.